Welcome back to the Nullified Take channel here on YouTube, where we've got the TNT takes for you on Australian Survivor Heroes versus Villains. That's right, we're a couple of days away from the season going live over here in Australia, and I thought, what a better way to start the season than looking at those players that have played before and to rank them in accordance and look at who are currently coming in with the biggest reputation on their legacy compared to those that may be coming in a little bit under the radar this season. Another thing that really motivated me to look into this for this season was that we had in Survivor South Africa our first returnee season, where certain people came into that season having never made a merge before, and they went from zero to hero. And it would be interesting to see, if we track it throughout this season, who's going to finish their legacy on a higher tier compared to what they had coming in, and who potentially could be doing their legacy damage this season. So only 11 returnee players out of the 24 players that will be playing this game, 13 newbies coming into the season. So you would imagine that the newbies, if they did find a way to band together, they could outvote and outnumber the newbies. But normally when it comes to these fans versus favorites kind of seasons, that's never the case. Players that come back and play the game for a second or a third time, they just have that experience of having been out there. Sometimes they have a little bit of an aura around them as well. And they also have something that's going to galvanize them together this season, because they've all got this shared experience of having played the game before. But without further ado, let's look at the legacy watch for this season and talk about the players that we should be looking out for coming into this season. All right, there we have it. So we're going to be focusing on 4 tiers here today. It's going to be a legendary tier, a top tier, a mid tier, and a lower tier. And we're going to be ranking each of these returnee players as they're coming back. Now, the first person here in line to be ranked is Sneaky Steve, my co-host. If you did watch our live where we spoke about all of the cast and we went into depth, we probably went into a little bit more depth than what I'm going to do here. He chose Sneaky Steve as his #1 male pick for the season. I couldn't believe it when I saw it.
The most obvious of them all. You know, I feel like you left him out intentionally or unintentionally, but he's the sneakiest player out there. He's the villainous of all villains. I'm going to pick Sneaky Steve.
Sneaky Steve as your
Sneaky
first
Steve.
pick.
The first pick, mate.
You would have to go and check out the recording to see his reasoning for that. But maybe some of that reasoning would also be, if we look at him currently, he's a player that went out early in his first season, did not make the merge, and just couldn't find a footing from the start. Now, when it comes to his personality, I understand why they're bringing him back. 100% understand why they're bringing him back, because he brings so much from a TV show perspective to the game. He seems to be one of the nicest guys possible. But where do I rank him? Currently, I'll have to rank him as a lower tier player coming into the season, having not even made the merge before. But when it comes to a character, I think he's a top tier character. So I'm very happy to see him come back for a second attempt at this game. And hopefully, coming in with probably one of the lower targets on his back this season. Maybe that's something that's going to play on his favor, because he doesn't have as big of a legacy as some of these other players that are going to be playing this season. Looking here at the second person, it's going to be Flick from Brains versus Brawn. Now, Flick had an amazing season the first time she played. She was one of the most popular players within the Brawn tribe very early on, and found herself within a very strong alliance there that she rode all the way throughout the game. She was never really in danger and was very well loved by everybody around her. There were even some people that after the season was over said that if she did make the final, she very well could have been the winner of Brains versus Brawn. So she fell one short, getting in 3rd place that season. But overall, she's a challenge beast. She's lovable. She's likable. And I can't see her being any lower than top tier at this point. I think that coming into the season, Flick has the potential, if she can bring more of a strategic game. We didn't see much of that, and sometimes that's the fault of the edit when it comes to Australian Survivor, because they tend to focus on the 2 or 3 players that are going to make it deep and potentially win the game. But we didn't see much of that strategic game. I would love for her to be more of a strategic force and be more proactive and take decisions into her own hands this season. But at this stage, I would put her at top tier coming into the season. Now, the next person comes into this season as a massive fan of Survivor. They wanted to go out there and prove that they could be a great when they played at the first game. But everything that possibly could have gone wrong went wrong. And that's Simon from Brains versus Brawn. He was voted out with 2 idols in his pocket, and he did misread some of his alliance members badly. Now, I've had people in the comments tell me that we can't blame Simon for not seeing Danny blindsiding him with the 2 idols, but I do think that throughout the season, he kind of underestimated how people viewed him. He had his back up against the wall very early on. He was never really in a comfortable position, but he showed promise. He showed that he could be someone that if he was to get another opportunity to play the game, potentially he could come in and he could be a big player. And he did have some people working with him throughout the season, more so than Steve, until he just didn't at the end. So I do think that he showed a little bit more promise than Steve for me in those early stages, even though he went home with 2 idols in his pocket. I would say he's a mid-tier player at this stage. He was great at challenges. He was helping his tribe along a lot. So that could be something that people will definitely look at and appreciate having him in that tribe, because he's going to be one of those players within the villains tribe that is going to have to go up against some of the big boys when it comes to the heroes. I don't see him going anywhere anytime soon. And I do think he's got the potential of moving up in the tier list if he can finally play the game that he wanted to play in that first outing. Moving on to the next person. It's going to be my man, George. And I know people are probably going to say this is a predictable one, but can you put George anywhere else but legend right now? I mean, let's be honest. The guy came into that season. He was an underdog from the start. He was ostracized. He was an outcast. He needed to find his tribe. And even with the people that he had in his alliance in those early days, they almost didn't want to work with him except for Carla. She was the one person, his rock. I mean, he had a player, let that sink in. He had a player play an idol on him to stay in the game. Like, Kara sacrificed her game for George, and she thought she was going to go home. If production didn't save Kara, she would have been gone. She didn't know that the twist was coming up. Definitely some conspiracy theorists out there would have said they try to save George. But if you're looking at it from a TV show perspective, I almost understand. Like, the guy was a massive presence that season. In my opinion, the best strategic player to play this game and never win it, and 100% deserves to be mentioned as a legend with some of the greats like Luke and David Gennard and so forth. And the first person I'm going to put at the highest bracket here, George has got it all to play for, and he's also got it all to lose this season. Now, if he does go home within the first 3 votes, does it really affect his status as a legend? Personally, I don't think so, because in my mind, him coming back, you have to vote him out early. If you're a good player of this game, if you understand what chaos George can bring to the game, you want to get rid of that uncertainty as soon as possible in the game. So it would just be the predictable move to make to try and get rid of him. But he can definitely build on this legendary status. He can go a lot further by making it to the merge and cement himself not only as a legend, but potentially the best player to ever play Australian Survivor. And I know that is putting some high praise on him, but all of that is to play for this season. So let's see where George goes. The next player here is someone that we all saw in the previous season of Australian Survivor Blood versus Water. It's the Joker, Jordy, and he was a massive character in that season. So you've got to think that he's going to be somewhere towards the upper tier of players. Now, I don't know if he was strategically the best player out there. I'll put it out there. I don't think strategically he was the best. He made a lot of mistakes. He played for that second Returnees season, which he's now getting. He's getting that opportunity to come back, but it's going to be Jordy Hansen, and he's going to be a top-tier player for me. I will put him behind Flick at this stage, because if Flick got to the final, I think she had a case to win and potentially could have won his season. Jordy, I don't know if he got to the end, if anybody respected his game enough to give him the win at the end, because he was so wishy-washy. He was throwing things at the wall and hoping something would stick. That's why nobody trusted him when he told all of the other people on the island or out in the outback that Mark and Sam had idols. He just lied so much and apparently told lies even before the merge, according to some of the players that I spoke with after that season that the credibility was gone by the time they got to the merge. So I feel like he overplayed his hand a lot that season, but top tier character, someone that went deep in his season, definitely not shocked to see him return this season. I'm shocked there isn't a few more players from his season on there. Obviously, Nina does come back and we'll talk about her in a bit, but definitely deserves to be a top tier player at this stage. All right, so we're heading on to this very next player, which is going to be Jackie, all the way from Champions versus Contenders. She was a poker player that pretended to be a Rubik's Cube champion that season, someone that was actually willing to work with the likes of Russell Hans in the early days and who wanted to be strategic. She was found out very early on in her season. People saw through her and they noticed that she could be a big player and a big threat. She would be able to cut anyone to get to the end. But I'll be very honest, in my mind, she definitely is someone that I would put down to the lower tier there with Steve. I find it hard to rank between the two of them. I do think Steve is a better character, so I probably put Steve ahead of her at this stage, but she's not coming in with a reputation of being a great player that made things happen in her original season. So she's got it all to play for, in my mind, as someone that got booted early on and didn't make the merge. I'd love to see her come back similar to Steve and for them both to prove us wrong and get into that middle and top tier brackets, but that is where I'm going to put her in this season coming in. All right, this next player that we're going to be talking to is no stranger to the competitive scene that is required when you go and play a game such as Survivor. It's going to be Sean, who's a retired AFL player. He came into Champions versus Contenders 2 as a player that was in the Contenders tribe, which is very surprising. He was the one person that season for me that was out of place within that tribe because there was a lot of normies, normal people that were in that tribe going up against these celebrities or previous sports stars, which he clearly was as well. But it was kind of, I think the story that season was that he never really won a title or he never got close to winning one at the end. For those that are in Australia that watch AFL, you can correct me if I'm wrong. Because of that, they said that he was a contender. And looking at Sean that season and the game that he played, I was very impressed. And that is my favorite season still up until this point of Australian Survivor. I really enjoyed that season. But he was a player that I'm very impressed by. He was clearly the leader in his tribe. Clearly everybody wanted to work with him and sort of gravitated towards that alliance. There was a few people that saw him as a threat, definitely that season as well, in regards to Andy and that being very sort of wary of the relationship that he had with Daisy and how strong they were as a duo. But he really was one of those players that was ahead of his time. He got fooled a little bit by David Gannett that season when David gave him an idol, but ultimately he did work out that David was not to be trusted, and he did try and work against David and Luke. And there was a few times where you could say he went toe-to-toe against them, but both of those players are legends in the game, and they did outsmart him and did, at the end of the day, got the best of him when he got to the merge. He was great at challenges. He showed some promise as a leader. I do think he's coming into this season, in my mind at least, as a top-tier player, and I would put him at this point possibly ahead of Jordy. And I know some people are probably going to look at that and say, why? Why are you putting him ahead of Jordy? Well, Jordy was someone who got the benefit of coming back from Redemption Island, or whatever they called it that season, the Exile Island of that season. He came back and got a second chance in the game to play again, and that helped him go deeper in the game. But I feel like Sean in a lot of instances played a winning game, but he just got found out very early on by very highly capable players. I rate the likes of Janine, Pia, and the likes of Harry and all those players very highly. He played with a highly skilled cast that just got the better of him when he got to the merge. They didn't want him to go onto an immunity run. But I do feel like in a lot of other seasons, I see him being a player that could go to the end and win this game. Similar to Flick. I think if Flick went to the end, she had a chance at winning the game. So for that reason, I will put him slightly above Jordy at this stage. Now, the next player here is someone that I think a lot of people are excited to see come back this season. It is the daughter of the Queen, Sandra Diaz-Twine. Nina is going to come back for her second attempt at the crown. Now, the first time she played, she came in with a massive shadow over her. That shadow is going to follow her a little bit into this season. I mean, you don't really get rid of the fact that you're the daughter of one of the best players to ever play this game, but she now has, in her own right, played the game. and she's getting that second opportunity to play again. And let's not forget, she was never voted out of the game. She showed early on in that game that she was going to be her own player by being great at challenges and helping her tribe, but she also had that cutting edge that she needed to make strategic and cutthroat decisions. Sadly, her game was cut short before she could do it because she ended up injuring herself. So very happy to see Nina come back. She showed promise in the early stages. I can't put her as a top tier player yet because I feel like her time was cut short before we really got to see her do much in the game. But we did see her influence some early votes there, and I think she was in a much better position than Simon ever was in the game. She was never in doubt in my mind to go to the merge. So I would put her at the top of the mid tier at this stage with everything to play for this season. I'm so excited to see Nina play again, and I'm so excited to see where she's going to end up on the Legacy Watch by the end of the season. All right, now we're getting into the heated debate, the debate of all debates. Where will Chris place Hayley compared to George, who he's a big fanboy of? And even that season, when I watched it, I thought, man, George is going to win this season. Hayley came back from the edge to win it. But listen, I got to give all credit to Hayley. She is a phenomenal player at this game. I've always said, as a player, and not just a winner, I rank her as one of the best to ever play the game, and I think she's going to show us this season why that is the case. She's coming in with the target on her back. I mean, George is probably target number 2. Hayley should be target number 1. She's likable. She's smart. She's athletic. She's got all the elements that makes a great Australian Survivor player or a Survivor player, nonetheless of what country you're in. She's one of the greats, right? So I think she's the highest ranked person coming into the season. She's already done it once. If she wins for a second time, we're talking right up there with the best of the best, potentially the best to ever play in any country. So she's got it all to play for, in my mind. And I'm very excited to see what Hayley is going to do because she, credit to her, did not say no to the opportunity to come back and play the game so shortly after having played it the first time, knowing that she's coming in with a massive target on her back as the only winner. And she's got some friends, and I think that's going to help. George and Hayley, there's a lot being made of their rivalry coming in, good versus evil this season, and they're talking up for cameras, but I do think they're good friends outside of the game. And she's also friends with Flick. I think that Hayley also probably has a great understanding and knows quite a lot of the other people that are going to come back to play the game this season as well. So in my mind, Hayley, absolute legend. Can't wait to see how the season is going to turn out for her. This next person is all the way from season 1. He's going back to Samoa, and it's going to be Sam. Sam, he's that player that if I was a lot younger when I watched the season, when I first started watching Survivor US, I like the Colbys of this world, and he probably fits that mold. And I would have been like the biggest Sam fan. I would have been like, yeah, I want the good guy to win, the guy with the integrity and all that kind of stuff. But in some ways, Sam and his whole mateship alliance that season kind of killed it a little bit for me because it was really hard to watch that and to be like, no, backstabbing is bad and Nick is a snake when he's hardly done anything. And that was hard to watch sometimes for me personally. But no matter how you look at it, he did extremely well for someone that went into that season not as a Survivor fan, who didn't know much about Survivor. He was always within the numbers. I do think there were people who played a slightly smarter game than him that he was sort of latching onto, but he had the smarts to latch himself onto the right people. So for that, you got to look at it and say this guy definitely fits the top tier bracket. I do think at this point, probably just behind Flick. And that's kind of where I would place him coming into this season. I feel good about that. How is he going to do this season? Is he someone that's going to live up to that reputation of being the honorable hero? Or will he become a little bit more villainous now that he's playing the game, having seen it before, having played it before, and have a better understanding of how it operates? I'm very excited to see what he does. He's going to be immense for them in the challenges aspect as well, because he is quite athletic. All right, so last but not least, this is the person that everybody came here for. They came for Shonee, and they would like to know, where do I play Shonee in this tier? Now, for me, Shonee is a great player. She's somebody that's played the game twice. She's coming back for a third time, the first player ever to come back for a third time to play this game. And she's got great content. She's got great strategy. I do think just by the fact that she is coming back for a third time, you got to put her in that legend bracket. You got to put her on there. And she's had 2 really good runs. She's got good strategy. This could be her season to come and win it, because even though she's a legend. I think people like Shonee more than they probably even realize. She's good at the strategic game, and she's good at manipulating and backstabbing. So likability in this game is massive. And if she gets to the end, I can very easily see her become the winner of this season. So there you have it. Those are my rankings from legend to lower tier. That's how I would have ranked it. I'd love to know in the comments, how would you have ranked these players? Do you think that I ranked some of these players too high or too low? Leave a comment below. Like this video so that I know you like this type of content, and I will do more of this in the future. I do want to sort of jump in between doing shorter form content and longer form content. So the more you guys support this, the more I will put this type of stuff out there as well. That's it. Have a great day, everyone, and talk to you soon. Don't forget to check out the live podcast next week, where we'll be talking about the first week of Australian Survivor. I'll be joined by my co-host Maki and also Kahuna as we break everything down for the first week. We do look at live comments. We do bring it up on the screen, and we love to have the live audience be a part of the conversation. So jump on at 8:30 p.m. Australian Eastern Standard Time to be a part of that live podcast. For now, see you next time. Bye.